Guys, we got to talk about it. It's the shorts of Kevin Smith. Hi, I'm Matt with State of Flux, here to talk to you about the short films of Kevin Smith, not the jorts that he's known for wearing all the time. We're talking about his short films. I'm only going to be talking about four. These are the four that I consider, because some of the other ones I would consider more pilots, and therefore wouldn't really be inclusive of what I'm going for this. Previously I've talked about all the feature directorial films he has made, as well as the Clerks pilot for a sitcom that he had nothing to do with, and the Clerks TV show that aired on ABC that he very much did have something to do with. These are the short films. The first three you can find on the Clerks 10th anniversary DVD or 15th anniversary Blu-ray. The other one is his short film that got included in the film Holidays. Up first is Mayday, the crumbling of a documentary. This is one that he made with Scott Mosier back when he was in film school in Vancouver. And this is an interesting one in that the narrative is that of a documentary. In fact, it appears to be a documentary. However, because their documentary didn't really pan out, they had to write some segments around it. So what it was, their pitch was they were going to follow this trans woman named May, who they had found in Vancouver. They were going to use her as the subject for their student documentary, when suddenly she ghosted them. And so the documentary then becomes how they were so inept at their jobs that this documentary slipped away from them, and is just allows for their crew to shit on their work and their work ethic the entire time. I think it's a pretty solid documentary, all things considered, when you're scrambling and trying to figure out what to do and you have to complete the assignment. This is kind of a genius and very creative way to do so. But is also kind of emblematic of some of the criticisms that could be hurled at Kevin Smith and his long-running career can be found right here in this film, which is that their crew is saying this is somebody who doesn't prepare, doesn't know what he's doing, just kind of wings it. These are attributes that helped him to make Clerks. He was prepared, he tried to make it, but he did have some shortcomings and was flying on the seat of his pants. That is kind of what propelled him into the stratosphere that he now rests in. These are attributes that can be used for good when things pan out, but if, like this, things don't necessarily pan out, you can point your finger at these shortcomings and say, well, it all starts right here. And this is very much, it sort of showcases that. However, his creativity shines through. He found a creative outlet to sort of save the documentary. And there are some staged performance moments here and there that really kind of work for the film, and I recommend you watching it. This is the most unlike Kevin Smith work that you would find. However, I think it's also a very Kevin Smith thing while you are watching it. Up next is the short film that he made for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and that is The Flying Car. Evidently, the origins of this short film date all the way back to his original draft of Clerks 2, back when Clerks 2 was going to follow Dogma, before it became Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Clerks 2 was going to open with this scene of Dante and Randall driving to someplace and getting stuck in a traffic jam. And during this session, during this moment, they discuss how the Jetsons lied to them. If Jetsons was real, there'd be flying cars and all this kind of stuff, and they wouldn't be in this predicament. This is one of my favorite works of Kevin Smith. I think this 5-minute segment shows his ability to dissect pop culture in a really clever and interesting way. The conversation that Randall and Dante are having is really fun, really funny. It's engrossing. Sadly, a touch homophobic. I think that has more to do with its time, but they never outright say that the punchline is a bad thing. But a homophobic reading can be read from the conclusion. It could also be read in a more positive way that, like, you just sell yourself for this kind of thing. Anyway, watch the short film. It's really funny. It's genuinely pretty hilarious. One of my favorite works of Kevin Smith. And I mentioned in, I think it was my Dogma review, that Dogma has the last of his dissections of pop culture. In Clerks, you get the amazing Star Wars scene, what did you like better, Empire or Jedi? In Mallrats, it's the kryptonite condom. In Chasing Amy, there's a couple of them with Archie Comics with the Lando Calrissian, that whole thing. And in Dogma, it's the Walrus and the Carpenter, and their meanings in Alice in Wonderland. Moving forward, they don't really dissect pop culture anymore. They just reference pop culture. And you kind of get a moment of it in Clerks 2 where Randall says he doesn't like Lord of the Rings and does the whole, like, throw the ring little gag, but that it's not a dissection in the same way that the other ones are. Again, that's more just commenting on how he likes Star Wars better than Lord of the Rings. This is kind of the last dissection that we've ever gotten into Kevin Smith work, and it's something that I looked forward to and are some of the shining moments of the 4 films that I did mention. This is up there with them. I think it's super good. So check out The Flying Car. Performances are great from both Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson. Jeff Anderson nails it as always. This is far more true Clerks than the Clerks cartoon was. Which is an excellent segue because the next one I'm going to be talking to you about is sort of only a short film in that it is a short that is included on the Clerks DVD, but it's really a lost scene, a deleted scene from the Clerks script. They had scripted what happens when Dante and Randall go into the wake, Julie Dwyer's wake, and the funeral rather. And this shows you what that scene is. It was cut from the movie at the script stage because it just was too cost ineffective. But once the Clerks animated show came out, they animated it in the Clerks animated TV show style, that scene of what it would have been. But they were able to tie in all the other movies into it. There's Mallrats references, certainly a Chasing Amy, huge Chasing Amy reference, as Alyssa Jones plays a big part, and they get Joey Lauren Adams to reprise her role. And there's even some Dogma worked into that as well. And this feels much less like Randall of the Clerks films or The Flying Car. This feels more like Randall from the TV show, where he's a little more of an absent-minded dwip who's very mean-spirited, rather than like the smart jackass in the room, who is like the ultimate slacker. And that's something that bothers me. However, it is funny. But this just goes to prove exactly why you should never, look what's in the box. Because what your imagination is probably far better than the mystery, the answers to the mystery therein. Yeah, when you find out what actually happens and how her body falls out, it's less funny, and it just seems so far-fetched. I prefer how the movie just kind of glosses over what actually happened in the funeral home, and it works better as a jump cut, especially when Dante starts yelling at Randall outside of the quick stop. Alright, the last one I'm going to talk to you about is his short film Halloween from the film Holidays. Holidays is a feature film with about 9 or 10 different directors who went through and directed a short film centered around a holiday with a horror slant. Kevin Smith got to do Halloween, the most horror-y of all the holidays, and you know, he does solid with it. Certainly his, I would argue that his short film is the best one of the bunch. His follows a guy with a very thick Canadian accent who operates a camgirl website, and he has under his ownership 3 young women who are forced into online camming for sex and stuff like that. And one of the girls is very upset when she is called a whore, and this guy is like, "That's what you are." And then there's this neat little moment where Harley Quinn Smith is one of these women, and she's like, "Do you know where you are? You're in a room with 3 women. Do you know what they used to call a room with 3 women? A coven of witches." And they knock this guy out, and they end up forcing I believe it's a dildo up the man's rectum and hook it up to a car battery, and they start torturing him as he has tortured them. And it's a little torture porny for me. I'm not a huge fan of that. However, some of the short film sparks. It's okay. It's on par with some of his work that he was into at the time, where he, for a short period there, became a horror director with Red State, Tusk, this, and Yoga Hosers. They all have strong horror leans, but only kind of horror, more horror adjacent. It's more like the stuff you're watching is so effed up and revolting that you're left horrified, but it's not horror in like a terror kind of sense. And it's okay. I like it. Some of it is just kind of poorly executed, but in Harley Quinn Smith, you can see a growth from her performance in Tusk to this, to what she would do in Yoga Hosers, and eventually the strong performer that she is by the time she does Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. The movie as a whole, not unlike the ABCs of Death, the short films just don't really soar even at their best. They're just kind of okay. As I say, the Kevin Smith one, the Halloween one, is probably the best one of the bunch, I would argue, and I think that's kind of telling. It's worth seeing. If what I described to you sounds interesting at all, I think you'd probably like it. And whatnot. It has a very strong Tales from the Crypt vibe. That's what they're going for, Tales from the Crypt, Haunt, Fear, these EC comics. Yet it feels less like those comics and more like the HBO version of Tales from the Crypt, where it just doesn't really, like, it's Tales from the Crypt, but it doesn't embody necessarily the spirit of those comics when you read them. It tries to be a little too edgy and goes too far with it, and the edgelord like twist on it just seems like it's trying too hard. But anyway, that's that. Those are my thoughts on the Kevin Smith shorts. As I say, Holidays is very much in the spirit, or wannabe spirit, of those EC comics, but I think lands a little more with the Tales from the Crypt TV show. But Smith's short is the strongest of the bunch. Of all of these movies, the 2 that I think are really absolutely worth watching are Mayday and The Flying Car. I believe both of which you can find on YouTube, and they're quite good. The other 2, if you want to know what happened with Julie Dwyer's funeral, check out the Lost Scene is what it's called. And if you want to see his version of Halloween, check out this movie, Holidays. It was on Netflix, I believe it still is, so you can see the whole film. The whole film itself is just, it's pretty rocky. But his part is that's that. That's my thoughts on the shorts of Kevin Smith. Up next, I might tackle either Jay and Silent Bob's Super Groovy Cartoon Movie or his other short that I almost included in this, but because it's a pilot, I didn't, and that would be Hollyweed. So you have one of those to look forward to this coming week. Thanks for watching. Peace.